Hey everyone, James Marin here, and today I want to talk about the pandemic and its effects on the film industry.
No! No!
Now, I know you're probably tired of hearing about the pandemic, but the goal of the video today is to provide you with some useful and practical information that I hope will be helpful to you. I'm not going to get into politics and I'm not going to give my opinion on anything. The video is strictly and simply informational. So the things that I'm going to cover in this video are the following. I'm going to show a broad overlook of how COVID has affected the film industry, things to potentially consider when you're offered a job during this time, and some tips on how to be prepared for your next job. So first, let's look at a broad overview of the pandemic's effect on the film industry. The first thing that I'd like to do is to put into context just how slow we are right now in LA. We opened back up on June 12th, and as of June 19th, according to the LA Times, Film LA has fielded around 14 film permit applications per day. That is just 20% of the daily applications intake that existed before the pandemic. So essentially, the amount of permits that are being handed out is down 80%. And not only that, but it goes on to say this. Smaller still photo shoots and commercials account for more than half of the incoming applications. So out of those 14 film permits per day, only half of them have been video related. The rest have been photo. Of course, this doesn't account for shoots that are on sound stages and things like that, but regardless, I think this puts into context just how slow we really are right now. Let me quickly point out another thing. As you know, we reopened as of June 12th. Now, here's an image from Google that shows that on that day, we reported 24,000 new cases that day. But as you can see, as of July 12th, which is the day that I'm recording this, we reported 62,000 cases, which is basically 3 times as much as on June 12th. And this brings me to my second point. Looking at this objectively, the simple fact is that the numbers in the US keep going up. Just take a look at where we rank globally when it comes to how many cases we have here in the US compared to a list of other countries. Unfortunately, America is number 1. And because of this, studios and production companies are looking at their options in regards to shooting in sound stages and on location outside of the US. Now, I'm not sure if you noticed, but France, Germany, and Canada, where there's lots of film infrastructure, are way lower on that list than we are. Therefore, making it a very attractive option for relocating a shoot that could be shot entirely on a soundstage. In fact, look at what this article from Variety had to say about it. With dwindling options in the US, some productions are beginning to entertain moving to Europe, where COVID-19 spread is far more under control. To me, that says the studios are so ready to get back on track that they rather fork out lots of money to simply relocate and deal with the costs of the pandemic than to risk filming here, which is understandable since it's a lot less risky to film elsewhere. Here's another piece from that same article. Studios and production services in Munich, Germany, and Studio Babelsberg in Berlin all tell Variety that they've noticed an increased interest from more US-based productions in using their facilities. So what does all this mean for you? Now, I could be terribly wrong, but it seems like this means that the jobs that potentially would have been offered to you could be relocating to somewhere outside of the US with an entirely local crew. So even though the film industry is open for business, there's not a whole lot of business to be had here, as I first pointed out with the permits and now with this. With the industry currently being as slow as it is, if our numbers continue to persist, this can only mean that the lack of work will also continue to persist.
Check out the big brain on Brad. You're a smart motherfucker, that's right.
And I could tell you firsthand that I had a job that I booked back around June 12th with the intention of shooting somewhere early July that ended up relocating to a soundstage in Canada directly due to the numbers that were increasing here in the US. So I'm sure you all hate me now and are thinking, wow, James, what a bummer video. But I say all this because I think there's something that we could all do about it. It seems like it is more important than ever for everyone to do their part. And not just for yourself, but for the entire film community as a whole. The more that we can all do to keep our numbers down, the better. This brings me to my next point of some considerations you might want to take when it comes to a job that's being offered to you during this time. The first one is something that's totally new to me, and it might be something that's new to you. And that is that non-union productions are starting to have crew members sign liability waivers. It's basically a waiver that says we, the production, are not liable if you get sick on our set. The reason that these waivers are starting to pop up is because some insurance companies aren't covering the production companies in case someone gets sick. Therefore, in order to not be liable over you potentially contracting COVID, which could also potentially cost them lots of money, they are having crew members sign these waivers.
You serious?
Unfortunately, yes. Here's an example of one that I've seen. Here it says, I hereby release and agree to hold. Now I've redacted the name of the production company, so that's why it's a black square. But to hold harmless from and waive on behalf of myself, my heirs, and any personal representatives, any and all causes of action, claims, demands, damages, costs, expenses, and compensation for damage or loss to myself and property that may be caused by any act or failure to act by the producers. Perhaps this isn't on every waiver, but in this example specifically, not only are you signing that you can't hold the production accountable if you get sick, but also if there's property damage that may arise from or in connection to duties performed for the production company. Which means if you're renting equipment out to the production and you sign this, you're also signing away your ability to hold them accountable for damage or loss of your equipment, even if they provide you with insurance. This really is a catch-22 because we all want to get back to work and we all obviously need income. Now, I haven't been presented with one of these yet, but I don't think I'd feel comfortable signing it. But every situation is different and everyone's personal situation is also different. I just wanted to address it and bring it to your attention. And as a quick reminder, this is for non-union jobs. On a union job, liability waivers are in direct violation of the Hollywood Basic Agreement, making liability waivers unenforceable on union shows. Okay, so all of this has been a lot. So in order to cheer things up a bit, here are a couple of videos of my cat Bonbon. Okay, so let's go ahead and get back into it. Okay, so the second thing to consider is what is the production doing to keep things safe on set? A lot of what I'm seeing are temperature checks before work and right after lunch. Production providing masks, hand sanitizer, disinfectant wipes, a COVID-19 compliance person, individually packed lunches for everyone, social distancing during lunch, and overall departments keeping to themselves in bubbles.
Hey! Oh! What are you? An astronaut?
No, I'm some kind of bubble boy.
How do you take a dump in that thing?
Another thing to consider is the location of the shoot. Something that's shooting outside or in a really big interior studio is probably safer than shooting in a house or apartment crammed full of people. Also, will there be any big company moves or anything that requires you to hop in a passenger van? Or is there any reason for you to be in a pass van, like having to get to the location itself via an off-site, off-location crew parking lot? I'd also ask if there's going to be a lot of people on camera without masks, like for the purpose of having lots of extras, because again, it seems like it would probably be a smart idea to not shoot something that has a lot of people on camera without masks in a crowded space. And again, it's not just for you, but for everyone's safety.
That's what I'm talking about.
And finally, it might just be a good idea to consider what your gut is telling you. Now, that may sound like strange advice, but just because there's a job offer and money on the table, does that make it a good idea? All I'm saying is that if you feel that perhaps a particular production isn't something that is going to work for you, maybe it's best to mitigate your risk by staying home and waiting for the next job. After all, no job is worth getting sick over, and if you get sick, you can't work. Now, the last thing that I want to mention are just some tips on how to be prepared for your next job. The first one is obvious, but be prepared with your own hand sanitizer, your own disinfectant wipes, your own mask, regardless of production. Production should absolutely be providing these things themselves, but this is just for your own peace of mind and for you to be prepared with it on your own. Another great thing to start bringing on set with you during this time is something like a camel pack or a platypus, or having like a big hydro flask with you. The reason being is that it's not uncommon for someone to pick up a water bottle, take a sip out of it, and then set it back down only to never touch it again because they forgot to put their name on it. So one, I don't want to waste any more plastic, and two, I don't want to potentially spread my germs around by setting down a nameless water bottle in which someone else confuses it for theirs and takes a sip out of it, and or some sort of scenario like that.
So what time we finish tonight?
I don't know, about 10ish, I think.
10, hey?
Plus, I just like knowing that I have all the water that I need for that day and I don't need to rely on production for it. I also don't need to rely on people going and grabbing water bottles for me whenever I'm busy doing something or some sort of scenario like that. The third thing to consider is to maybe start bringing your own snacks or even your lunch. There's a few things I've noticed. Crafty is essentially non-existent. That's just the way things are right now. So if you want to have snacks throughout the day, I suggest that you bring your own. The other thing I notice is because the lunches are individualized, the portions are much smaller. Probably because they don't want to waste food, which is great. But also they're making the lunches to the exact amount of crew that are on the show that day. So if you're like me, by the time lunch rolls around, I'm just starving. And if the portions are smaller, then I'll probably be hungry for the rest of the day. A solution to this is to start bringing a cooler with some ice in it and to just pack your own lunch. Lastly, let's talk about W-9s and unemployment. Fortunately, there is some okay news about unemployment and working under a W-9. According to EDD, in the case of contract work, you don't have to report the money until you're actually paid. Your state's unemployment commission will reduce your benefit payment for that week based on the amount you received in compensation for your 1099 work. So if the job you're working is net 30, you don't actually have to report the income until you get the check 30 days later after you've worked the job. But again, I'm not a tax professional or anything like that, but this is coming from the EDD website and a different article that I read, and I'm linking both of those down below so you could check them out. Well, that's it for today, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. I hope there was some information in here that was either helpful or can be helpful to you in the future in some way. I know that this was probably not as fun as my last video or as entertaining. I'm hoping to keep switching it up. The next video that I put out will definitely be something different and not related to this at all. But either way, thank you again for watching, and I hope you have a great day.